Alright, so here I am back with some more Fate, and today we have the anti-noble phantasm. So yeah, we're just gonna have Tsiah explain some of that for us, or at least for me, right? Some things that either I may not have known of, and definitely, yeah, I would know some of them. But yeah, it's always good to just check again, look back, see what else they have, and yeah, Tsiah, he's definitely something, right? Know how to really just explain himself and yeah, express himself a lot of things, right? Yeah, so he's cool, and I'll definitely look at some Taku Daikun, actually get back into the Magecraft, right? Keep on looking at that and some other things that he may have. So yeah, it's definitely cool to have YouTubers like this, right? That can explain things to you, really just give what they have, yeah, their own opinions and all that, and yeah, you can just move on. But other than that, yeah, I'm gonna just get right into this here. We got about a good, let's see, like 20 minutes. So yeah, let's see what we
So
got.
this time around, we gotta discuss something that hardly gets addressed even in the world of Fate itself, and that is the classification of all these different MPs throughout the franchise. Namely, here we have some of the antis. We got the patron request from Sal. He says, can you explain the anti-classification that MPs seem to have and rank them from weakest to strongest? By the way, if you haven't already, make sure you guys sign up for the Patreon.
Yeah, there it
You
goes.
get access to early content and priority on your request. So as you guys know, every time we get these phantasms, alongside their rank and the range of people that they're designated for, there's usually a type that comes with it that points out what it's meant to be used for. When it first started, it was pretty straightforward, but after FGO came into the mix, a lot of these started to blend into each other. Many people started to spawn their own, which are very unique. And even without FGO, there's still a lot of them that go across multiple fields. If you look at the database, we come up to more than 70 types of these categories. So of course, we're gonna save the behemoth for a different video, but we are gonna discuss the main ones here. Going back low to the ground, you have one of the originals, the anti-unit, the
Okay.
one that most people are probably familiar with. From the Fate Zero animation guide, a noble phantasm that targets one unit or the user themselves. It costs little mana and it's effective in one-on-one battles. And the examples that they give is of course Gay Deer, which is one of the spears of DR move. It's the red one that cuts ties with magical energy. This is also how he got through Preladi's spell book when they were going against Jill. And then the other one is a knight that does not die with empty hands, or in other words, Knight of Honor, the one that comes from Lancelot. This is the one that allows him to turn everything that he wills that's within capacity into a noble phantasm. And then to attest to the fact of them supposedly using a low amount of magical energy, you have Gay Bull, which is also anti-unit. And you know, we covered the fact that Ku can use his Gay Bull 7 times before he has to refuel.
Yep.
That's on top of the fact that he doesn't have the best of masters. He could have had better. That's on top of the fact that his master had 2 servants that he had to account for. And that's also considering that he wasn't getting fuel like Gil was from the orphans under the church. All these different things. And you know, we called this out before. So it's like, well, if he can do it that many times, then what happened? It's a business, man. You don't want people out here looking bad. You gotta sell the business. But everybody that knows, they know. Okay, so while we're talking about Stay Night, let's deviate. So when you look at UB Dub on the list, originally, you know, I discussed the fact that it wasn't even supposed to be a real phantasm. And because of this, it originally had no type. But you go to his later iterations for the exact same phantasm under a different name, and you look at people like No Name from Extra, and then UB Dub gets classified as an anti-unit. Same thing with Emiya Alter's Unlimited Lost Works. They're all anti-unit. So even though it didn't have one at first, they do address the fact that ideally it's supposed to be against the person that you're going against. Not to say that you can't bring in more, because if you remember the adaptation, he also pulled Saber into it. So it's not limited to so and so amount of people. That's just the ideal. All of them were the same category, but none of those are the same. Ivan's Oprichnik Phantasm, which allows him to summon 3,000 familiars, anti-unit. Chiron's Phantasm, where he literally snipes you from space. He used this in his fight against Achilles. Anti-unit. Excalibur itself, back in Fate Zero specifically, is also regarded as anti-unit. But if you look at nearly any other iteration, it comes out as something different. Richard the Lionheart's Excalibur, anti-army. Saber's Excalibur in Stay Night, anti-fortress. King Arthur's Phantasm in Prototype, also anti-fortress.
Okay, so yeah,
Like
this
I
is
said
interesting.
Earlier, they can span across multiple categories, and you can stack them. You can have more than one at a time. Then we have the anti-army Phantasm, a noble phantasm that targets several dozen to several hundred units, capable of wide range attacks to stand up to enemy armies, which is the one that belongs to Alexander the Great. Of the sunken spiral castle.
I was like, hold on, I remember that name from somewhere. I'm like, hold up.
And of course, Prelati herself. So this is the one that you want to have if you're going against a lot of formidable figures. It appears that the gist is that you really want this for someone more than what your normal standards can bear. It would be like comparing Medea's Bone Tooth Warriors to the 100-Face Hassan. The Bone Tooth Warriors can be looked at more as foot soldiers, whereas Hassan, they're all a unit that works as one. And so considering that's something that would take more priority. As far as Alexander the Great himself, his Army of the King Phantasm is a reality marble where he pulls you into a situation where you have to deal with his actual army manifested as low-level servants. And at that point, they become a lot more dangerous to a person that doesn't have anything that can deal with this. Hell, even if you do have something that can deal with this, there's no guarantee that you're gonna get out of it. We all saw what happened to 100-Face once he pulled them in. So the proof is there. The textbook is an interesting one because it falls into a different category once it's in the hands of Prelati. So once she gets it, it becomes a different category altogether, anti-principle. But as far as when it comes to Jill, it's still anti-army. And you know, Fate Zero is before everything else came out, so it is going to be more vanilla in terms of what categories we get into. The book itself is literally pulling out a nigh infinite amount of creatures from the other side. The aliens that we saw were just some of many. The same reason why the book itself is regarded as greater magecraft, because this is the type of spell that you would expect out of multiple people coming together in one grimoire. That's how strong these types of phantasms are. And Ku's second version of his gay bulb is anti-army, the one where he throws it. Vasavi Shakti from Krana, his main move is anti-army. Kusanagi, the main move from Yamato Takeru, anti-army. Del Sol from Ketz, which is the one where she harnesses power. I can't do an entire ocean's worth, but my noble phantasm is enough to clear a perimeter around Tiamat once she gets ashore. I will use my son's pilgrimage, Del Sol, to vaporize the mud right from under her. This is right after Ushi tells us how much it would take to get rid of this tide. The only noble phantasm that could destroy this sea will be one capable of gathering all the magical energy of the entire era. In other words, only the light bands covering the heavens can rival Mother now. Do any of you have such a powerful noble phantasm? And Ketz responds by saying, funny that you should say that, we just might. Except she could only showcase so much because of her container and because of the planet itself. Just in case anybody needs a reminder, nerfed by the way. All these spirits are way stronger than you think. I mean, she's a creator god, so it's different. You expect her to be strong. But just in general, we have so many nerfs in place before they actually get into the act that by the time they finally do, it paints the illusion that they're worse than they actually are. Another thing about her Del Sol is that it's another one of those phantasms that stack, so it's also anti-fortress. Edmond Dantes in Fur Chateau d'If, his move is anti-army. Medusa's Blood Form Andromeda, same thing. Nightingale's Pledge that nullifies nearly every magecraft, same category. And then we get off into the anti-fortress phantasm, a noble phantasm that is powerful enough to blow away even a sturdy castle, significantly higher up than the anti-unit and anti-army phantasms, but it consumes a massive amount of mana and is difficult to use in quick succession. You have Excalibur in a vein being a part of this category. So from the ones that we have so far, anti-unit at the bottom, army in the middle, fortress above them both. And considering that we know how powerful an Excalibur can get, the fact that it took out the White Titan, something of this caliber can only go up from here. Phantasms that are in the same category as this one. Kusanagi, the same one that Yamato and Ibuki has. Rango Minion, Grom from Sigurd, Balmung from Siegfried, Suitor's Sun Sword from LB2, which was canonically capable of annihilating all the Norse deities from the Age of Gods. The sword itself is literally mentioned that it's a weapon meant to tear an entire texture off of the planet's surface, because our version of the planet is layered. Ozzy's Ramazium falls into the same thing, and given the fact that we know that his temple was able to outdo Excalibur itself without the proper seals unleashed, that speaks to how much of a threat it is on its own. That is a part of the reason why they literally had to jump Ozzy in fragments. Problem is, if something like this is used at its best, unlikely that the servant is still going to survive unless they have the proper source. But given a normal war, that's usually not the case. Then we have one of the behemoths, something that's not for everybody, the anti-world phantasm. There is
Anti-world.
also a rare EX classification, which is given to extraordinary anti-world noble phantasms, but few heroic spirits have phantasms of this level. A good example of this would be Gil's phantasm.
Okay.
Tsiah, the weapon that split the heavens and earth. It's not just called that without reason. The weapon itself can literally destroy whole worlds.
Yeah.
We saw what happened when he pulled it out against the Skander. That's just one example of a world. This
Decimated, right?
Pronounced when you go over into the extraverse. And in the moon cell, you know, the sources for servants become boundless. Oh, they just show these galaxies in the background for him for embellishment. They're there for a reason. The thing is, in most circumstances, and especially in the main canon, he's being restricted by something, whether that be his container, by the counterforce itself, etc., etc. In the extraverse, he's classless, and once you get him into his mythological code, he becomes even stronger, only being barred by the narrative itself. Even in Aya's base form, it's still regarded as an anti-world phantasm. That's something that even Excalibur doesn't have, and that's the difference. Anti-world pretty much says what it does itself. It destroys the world. It destroys that layer of the planet, the texture. If that world is comprised to a singularity, that's the whole singularity. If it's the Lost Belt, I've said it before with God Juna's phantasm. We saw that his destruction was comprised to all of the Lost Belt. That Lost Belt being all of India. If they get outside of these chapters and have the resources to do so, then that world expands to planet Earth itself. But they would have to
So
get there
it
first.
seems like it's
Most
not
people can't
too
just
difficult
do
to
it
like
immediately.
classify
That's the
like
thing. A lot
with
of people have to
anti-world,
read it
anti-army
together.
from
Oberon's phantasm.
what we already
Is
know.
another
Yeah.
good example. The world was stated that it was going to end before we
Doesn't
even
seem
got
too
there
bad,
due to
yeah.
his involvement. And by the end of the chapter, you can already see what will be happening to the world.
And that looks
if
crazy
you were
right
there
here.
to put
I'm
a
just
full
looking
stop
at
to it.
everything.
In LB6, Vortigern's phantasm. It's a conceptual insect, an infinite hole which will consume Britain and this planet from the inside out. Well, you can think of it as an endless void. The British Lost Belt will vanish in 24 hours. With it, a wave of destruction will spread across the earth like a tsunami. The planet will reach the end of its lifespan and become unable to withstand its own gravitational pull. It will collapse into nothingness. It's a dead end for humanity, one that will supersede the bad end for humanity that wiped the earth clean. This gravitational pull, where do you think it's coming from? Oberon's phantasm, the wormhole that's sucking everything in. And that's the thing, people see these categories and they think it's restricted to that. Things like anti-city level, anti-country level. That doesn't mean that's the only thing that it can destroy. That's the ideal thing that it destroys. Just looking at Moriarty's phantasm, his was only anti-army and he nearly destroyed the world himself. Even in his profile it tells you, by using this noble phantasm to its greatest extent, it took another step closer to achieving the destruction of the protagonist and the planet. Utilizing his noble phantasm, Moriarty designated an asteroid called Bennu as the bullet, which he managed to shoot towards the planet, which would have led to its implosion had that got outside the singularity.
So yeah, basically it just doesn't have any limitations, right? It can still do more than what it's classified as.
Into the story. Back in Shinjuku, she says even at
this is all interesting, all unique, right?
Noble phantasm almost certainly couldn't break an entire planet apart. And even if an anti-planet noble phantasm existed on paper, it wouldn't be enough to destroy this one. But here's the thing about that statement. It's not finished. She lacked critical information, and she later got corrected real time by Sherlock. Ah yes, about destroying this planet. In brief, it is entirely possible. Wait, what? How can that actually be possible? So there's quotes being thrown around by people that aren't even fully aware because we weren't that far into the story yet. Earth has a number of safety provisions in place. He can't possibly circumvent them all. Right you are. Thus, in order to do so, one must completely overturn one's most basic preconceptions. In other words, what the Lion King attempted to do in the Holy City, remember Camelot, and what Edison attempted to accomplish using the Holy Grail's power. And then later in the story, you have Moriarty correct Holmes because he tried to say the same thing. It is true that with the world divided, Earth's safeguards or the counterforce would fail to work. Nonetheless, destroying the entire planet should remain utterly unfathomable. No matter how great his control over Shinjuku may be, it is not enough to destroy the world. In which case, Moriarty, what do you think you would need to make such destruction possible? So he's saying things like should, and he's asking Moriarty himself what he's going to do to destroy the world. He doesn't even know. He's literally asking Moriarty how it's going to happen. Because at the time, he didn't know Moriarty was going to shoot the planet. To destroy the planet, one would need enough energy to match that scale. That energy would then need to be focused toward the Earth's core, a central destruction point. But even in context to Shinjuku, he would have had to have done this outside the chapter also, which at that case, the counterforce would have caught him. Same thing with Suiter. The max level of his phantasm was anti-world. In Lost Belt 2, by doing so, he had hoped to bring Twilight not only to the gods, but to the entire world. He destroyed each of the Norse world's 9 realms and attempted to burn down the very planet. Odin and the remaining gods banded together to try and prevent this unthinkable ending, but even they could not win against Suiter. However, they were able to fight him to a stalemate. Though the gods were completely destroyed, Odin was able to seal Muspelheim away with one final room, leaving it hanging in the sky as a false sun. And he did this with his sun sword phantasm.
Okay, so hopefully everything is fine here. I just saw it was maybe a little bit of lag, so yeah, just pause it real quick. Yeah, start everything back over. So here I am, I guess you could say about maybe like 10 seconds back. So yeah, let's see if this can work now. Yeah, everything should be good. Yeah, let's go ahead and make it through. We got like what, 3 minutes left or something.
In the way that fate works in general, even God Juna himself. When I think about actual planet busting, I'm thinking when they hit the button, it's over.
Yeah, just like that.
You don't have long. But with a lot of these spirits, they can destroy the planet, but we have a long time in between that to stop it. Same thing with Space Ishtar's phantasm. She comes from a completely different timeline, but in context to ours, if she were able to get through, we would not be able to stop it. Grand Lancer Romulus, his Astra phantasm, is also stated to be anti-planet. You realize that we had to pull him out in order to fight the highest god of the Greek pantheon, Zeus himself. That alone speaks to his power, and it's already been mentioned mentioned multiple times that Zeus, with only 35% of his power unlocked, could destroy the planet. His thunderbolts are planet busters, and that's at a low level. You get even higher than that, and then you talk about his anti-star system, his anti-space-time system, anti-concept, which would obliterate things even further than that. Though, of course, that's yet to be seen, because we would have to have that in order for it to be showcased. See, with a lot of these series, whatever timeline they're in is not the main timeline, so they pretty much can do whatever they want. Or you have the instance like Dragon Ball where you can just bring it all back, so there's no real loss. We can't blow up a timeline because then we don't have one. They can't show us blowing up timelines and galaxies until we get that proper spin-off, like a sequel to the Star Wars event. We're stuck on Earth at our best just ripping textures off of the planet. But even ripping a texture off of the planet in most series is equivalent to decimating all of Earth. You know, things like Excalibur being anti-fortress at its base makes sense in a pocket because it's not gonna do anything beyond that without the seals coming off. So until we see that, or until we get an Excalibur in that form, it wouldn't be noted to be that anyway. The best we've seen of this is from King Arthur himself when he released the seals against the Beast of 666. Then of course it would scale higher, and there's plenty of categories off to the side. Anti-thaumaturgy, which is basically anti-magecraft. This is like rule breaker that literally takes out majority of magecraft. Anti-divine phantasms, we've seen a lot of those. One that gets brought up the most is the Demon King of the Sixth Heaven from Nobu, which gives her priority as long as the person that she's fighting against is divine. Things like Enkidu that can constrain divine spirits. We saw this against Hurt, even in the base series, and it worked. Tai Gong's God Striking Whip that he used as a Shion, same level. Or the anti-beast phantasms that he used against Kalyanskaya. Anti-country, Karna and Rama's Brahmastra. Stella that comes from
just all this anti this, anti that. But yeah, it's interesting though, having
just have something fitting to the situation,
variants of this and that,
and that will be really hard for anybody that prioritizes in that. It's more about optimizing the right types of servants that you're with, if anything.
Okay, and I think that should be about it for this one. So yeah, definitely interesting. A lot of classifications, and yeah, seeing like, yeah, if it's like what, anti-city or something, like, yeah, it doesn't have to be limited to just a city. It can also, yeah, do damage or do whatever it's supposed to be doing to like a much larger scale. So yeah, that's definitely interesting to hear about. See, so yeah, there's definitely a lot here, right? And I think there was a few weapons that I saw that was kind of new to me, at least. So yeah, just look back at that. But yeah, this is interesting. Yeah, and also just seeing like what is it, like Enema? Yeah, something like that. It's like anti-world, you know, something that I already knew about. And yeah, there you go, right here. Yeah, something I already knew about, and being like, oh, okay, so yeah, literally I know like what Enema can do. So I'm like, yeah, that makes sense for it to be anti-world. And if anything, you know, when I try and figure out like, you know, what's going on at least with certain other noble phantasms, like, yeah, what would this be an anti-version of? I could be like, wait a sec, I know what Excalibur is like, you know, let me try and guess. So it'd just be interesting to do something like that as well. Let me see, I'm gonna try and go back to somewhere if I can see it. I know definitely, yep, let me see, your army and all that. Okay, yeah, cause I was like, wait a second, I know that name from somewhere, Army of the King. I was like, okay, I think I know exactly what that is. So that's interesting. So that's pretty much about it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and just love, yeah, definitely loving the sword. Yeah, I like my swords and all that. Definitely seen, yeah, some of this before. So of course that's, other than that, yeah, I guess let's end it off on Enema or something, right? Yeah, other than that, that's pretty much about it. Yeah, I know, sorry for the lag or whatever. Yeah, I guess I'll just keep this short just in case it happens again. Yeah, sometimes it's just like, yeah, computers and all that, they just be doing their thing, right? But other than that, yeah, it should be about it for this one actually. So, yo, if you guys did enjoy, make sure you like, subscribe, and yeah, see you guys in the next one.